Welcome back to the Grand Solar Minimum channel. I'll move that fizzy drink out of the way there. Sorry about that. Probably went right in your ears. Oh, hey, before I start, Mari, would you let the beast out of her cage? Sorry, Bella was on timeout. Anyway, welcome back to the Grand Solar Minimum channel. Tonight is Monday, December 23rd, 2019. Happy Christmas Eve, as we are approaching the holiday that so many of us are getting ready for. Some of you out there may not celebrate, and that's fine too. But for those of you that do, we hope everything is going according to plan. All right, let's get into our report tonight. Space wind, solar wind, I should say. Space wind. I guess it is space wind. Solar wind speeds coming in at 344.2 kilometers per second with a density of 3.9. And yeah, sunspots in a row. We finally broke that 40-day streak. And this sunspot is actually a member of solar cycle 25. Now, just hold on to your hats. That doesn't mean that we are entering the solar maximum by any means, but it is worthy enough to mention because this is a member of solar cycle 25, and we'll go over that real quick. The two reasons we know this. A, the polarity is flipped. So where the negative is the minus, or the minus is the positive is, they flipped. So that's how we know this is a part of solar cycle 25. Also, the location. And I had to bring this up tonight because I thought Mr. Starman, David Birch, did a wonderful job. This is basically, if you're new to anything that is grand solar related, or any kind of what do you call it? Sunspot theory. You're just now getting into this, trying to figure out how this works. This chart is absolutely brilliant for people like myself, actually, too. But if you look in the middle, let's get the arrow out, shall we? This is where solar maximum sunspots will occur. All right, in the equatorial region between the 15s. Up here in the very high latitudes, 30 to 45, 30 to 45 in the southern hemisphere, this is where we will see new sunspot. So when you see sunspots for solar cycle 25, especially now, you're either going to see them here or up here. And David really just, he's always making up useful charts for everyone to look at and try to make sense of this. But this is one way you can tell when you're in a new sunspot area and the beginning of a new cycle, in the pink, top and bottom. And when you're in a maximum, they're all going to line up in here, below the equatorial region around this area, and above around this area, okay? And it'll look like a big light show right across the face of the sun. Now, solar maximum, and I've got a great article to go over with you guys tonight on what's up with that. But solar maximum is predicted to be somewhere around July of 2025. Now, what is solar maximum? Solar maximum is the peak time of solar activity during a solar cycle. Also, we will see our peak counts of sunspots during this time as well. But there is a couple of things that we have to keep in mind. When you're in a grand solar minimum, you have periods of weak maximums in each solar cycle during a grand solar minimum. I will tell you right now that solar cycles 25, 26, and 27, from what I've seen, are going to continue to trend towards weaker and weaker as we move through these next few decades during the grand solar minimum. And a grand solar minimum is a period of low solar activity anywhere from 3 to 7 decades long, sometimes longer. I know there's a lot of information out there about the grand solar minimum, but there are factors that get ignored. And that is that we experience minimums and maximums even during a grand solar minimum. Now, I'll show you guys a sunspot chart, actually. And when you look at the Dalton minimum, and the Maunder minimum, folks, is a grand cycle. This is approximately about 350 to 415 years old, this period of time. Plus, we didn't have as accurate record keeping. But even during the Maunder minimum, you'll notice here, and I'll zoom this in a little bit. Even during the Maunder minimum, we still had periods of weak sunspots. Now, according to this chart, we went through a 4-year low of nothing. All right. But even during the part that is still considered the grand solar minimum, which we started coming out of it right around here, okay, we still had maximum sunspot counts. You're going to see it in the beginning of the grand solar minimums, and then you have cycles. Over each cycle, you'll see the cycle getting lower and lower of activity. Amplitude also declines. And this one continued for a very long time before we started seeing solar cycle activity of almost normal. And by the time we hit the 1760s, we started seeing our sunspot cycles recovering back to normal. But folks, it's important to mention that this is the beginning of a grand solar minimum. So here we are. All right. And then you'll see solar cycle 24 and 25 right about here. We'll see peak numbers around this area right here. And as we head closer to the third, 27th cycle, there's where we'll look at numbers that should be peaked right around 50. Now, 2050 to 2070 in this chart is predicted to be very quiet. Solar cycle 25, some have predicted 115 max sunspots. Some have said 91. Then solar cycle 27 is predicted to be lower than solar cycle 25. And that is also predicted to be somewhere around 80, 75 as the max. And then by 2040, 2050, that solar cycle, we're not even expecting a max period of 50 sunspots or more. So again, thanks, David, for putting this chart together that helps people follow. Now, just because we saw one sunspot in a region where new sunspots appear does not mean that solar cycle officially has begun today. We will still see intermixing of solar cycle 24 and 25 for a little bit longer before we get to solar cycle 25, when then we will start to see the consistency of sunspots appearing in the same regions over and over again. Again, I got an article that I'll go over that'll talk a little bit about this upcoming solar minimum and the future as well. But once again, we have a sunspot, and it is a member of solar cycle 25. That does not yet signify that we are in solar cycle 25, but we are definitely in the deep parts of a minimum, and some are saying that we'll see the peak of this sometime, I mean, believe it or not, 2021. This kind of activity could continue. Low activity. But looking at our star in the future right now, this is the only sunspot to speak of. It's sunspot number 11. It's a very small sunspot, and more than likely will take about 36 hours to finally decay, which puts the total of 284 on shaky ground right now. So it just depends on when this thing actually was named a sunspot. But right now, if this thing goes away tomorrow, like I think it will, Mari, as long as there's no more setbacks, your number of 284 will be correct.
What's the prize?
My friendship and loyalty, and my love.
Wow.
You couldn't ask for a better prize.
I only get that if that's the...
No, you get it no matter what. So I'm just being silly. All right, shallow 6.0 earthquake hits off the coast of Vancouver Island, British Columbia, here in Canada. I know a lot of folks are looking at this. Dutch Sense did a live feed earlier today around 4 o'clock Central Time live talking about this. A friend of mine on Facebook Carl has also been messaging me, and he's concerned as well that he thinks there is a good possibility for a 6.0 in California, like the farther south you go, Southern California, near the Bajas, basically. But a strong, shallow earthquake registered by the USGS as a 6.0 off the coast of Vancouver Island, about 1949 UTC on December 23rd, 2019. Very shallow depth of 6.2 miles. The Earthquake Canada is reporting a 5.8 at a depth of 3.1 miles, preceded by a 5.1 and a 5.6. The aftershocks continue, by the way. We had back-to-back 6.0s, and you know how that works. They have been downgraded. But I can tell you, a lot of folks are, like I said, are watching what could be happening as far as a watch for California to get a 6.0. And I understand why. I followed what happened in Ridgecrest, and I watched a lot of Dutch Sense during that time, and he made a lot of sense. Absolutely. Made a lot of sense. All right, so I'm just bringing up some stats here. We've had a 6.0, 6.0, 249, 356, 6.0, a 5.7 at 213, and that's how it all got started. Actually, we had a 5.2 earlier this morning in the same region. And since then, we have not had, let's see, the last time we had an aftershock was around 6:38 Eastern time, and that was a 4.7. So at the moment, we have not seen anything, but this just in, a 2.9 earthquake has struck near or just south of San Jose, Santa Cruz, in that vicinity as well. So there is concern that energy is being transferred, and we could see a 6.0 or stronger in Southern California before it's all said and done. We'll keep you updated on that as well. So if there is any kind of live breaking news, even if we're off the air, we will try to be there and cover this, as this is raising a little bit of concern for folks over there. And you know, actually one more thing before we go to the next story. I mean, you know, December 26th, we've got the Ring of Fire eclipse too, where the moon eclipses the sun. You know, who knows what kind of funky seismic activity could happen in just, less than 3 days. So lots of interesting things happening right now as we speak. Australia on fire, 9 people killed. More than 800 homes have been destroyed. Nearly 100 fires in New South Wales, and hotspots in every state. Starting late August 2019, the Australian East Coast saw a number of major brush fires across multiple states, with the worst areas hit is central and southeast Queensland, and various regions in New South Wales, North Coast, Mid-North Coast, Cessnock, the Hunter region, the Hawkesbury northwest of Sydney, and the Wollondilly southwest of Sydney. As of Monday, December 23rd, around 94 fires continue to burn across New South Wales. 58 are yet to be contained. On Sunday, December 22nd, the National New South Wales, said that fires had destroyed 829 and damaged about 33 homes, 62 facilities, 79 damaged as well, and about 1,900 outbuildings that have been affected by this as well. More than 7 million acres. That's how much this fire has burnt, has killed at least 9 people, with 1 person still unaccounted for. Bushfire smoke is affecting large parts of central and eastern New South Wales. Onshore winds move the thickest smoke further inland from Sydney, but smoke can be seen and felt when flying over the Tasman Sea, according to the BOM. December 22nd as well. And I thought it was interesting to mention too, Australia recorded its hottest day on record on Wednesday. And unfortunately, that is false. 41.9 degrees Celsius is not the hottest day on record for them. And the reason why I say this is because there is an article shared from some folks who showed that back in 1933, there was temperatures at 50 degrees Celsius in Australia back in 1933. Sorry, I don't have the exact time and date, but it's easy to report on some of this stuff because so many outlets, some of these mainstream fake news medias are reporting it. So when you look at the AP ticker and you're reporting this stuff, you have no choice. That's what's being reported. But thankfully, in this community, we do have folks who have those records and those articles, and thankfully we get the correct links. Again, this is no diss at watchers by any means. They didn't do anything wrong. They didn't write this report. They are simply reporting the news that's been told to them. But I'm here to let you guys know that the hottest day on record was not 41.9 degrees Celsius. Maybe in a December, but again, I'll have to check that article and find out the exact date for that. Landslides strand over 8,000 vehicles, up to 3 feet of fresh snow. Yeah. This was on Sunday, December 22nd, following landslides that blocked the road. Meanwhile, Kashmir Valley and higher reaches of Jammu region, including the Chenab Valley areas, received fresh snow beginning on Friday, with higher reaches of Kathua district seeing about 3 feet of snow. Rain and snow from December 11th to the 14th prompted closure of the highway until the 15th of December. On the 17th, it was closed again for a major part of the day after landslides hit the road in Ramban. Another massive landslide hit the road on Saturday afternoon, December 21st, leading to another closure. And yeah, I mean, look at that. That's, no, you're not getting around that. And fears, of course, of more happening. It's a big landslide and will take 2 or 3 days to clear the road, at least. The highway will be open on Monday evening, December 23rd, or Tuesday morning. They haven't made up their minds as of yet. More than 8,000 trucks and small good vehicles are stranded on our side. There are no passenger vehicles, thankfully. On the other hand, upper reaches of the valley, including the capital Srinagar, received snowfall on Friday, December 20th. The traffic police officer said that thousands of vehicles were stranded on the highway from the Kashmir side. These moving from Jammu to Srinagar had said the condition of the roadway was bad and slippery. After every wet spell, the water seeps into the mountain, causing landslides. In particular, the area that saw up to 3 feet of snow, they said here with the road link between Ben Shartal and Bani Barshal affected badly. There was about 3 to 6 inches of snow near Jawar tunnel there on Saturday, December 21st. Roughly 1,000 vehicles were stranded. So over a course of about 4 days, we've had multiple highway closures due to snow, landslides, and now over 8,000 vehicles that were stranded. Most of them were not passenger vehicles, but they were, vehicles that were transporting goods. So that affected the supply and the demand. Price rises are probably on the way. And let's hope that there's no product that was damaged from being stranded during this event. All right, let's move over here. Unfortunately, more highway talk. And this one was crazy. Yesterday, actually. This was a 69-car pileup in Virginia. There was ice on the bridge with heavy fog in the area at the time of the crashes. Some of the victims had life-threatening injuries, the state police had said. East and westbound lanes closed for hours, and most of the injured people were released from hospitals this morning. Most of the 51 people injured in the nearly 70 vehicles that were involved in a series of chain reaction crashes on Virginia's Interstate 64 have been released from the hospital. Eastbound and westbound lanes were closed for hours on Sunday on I-64 near Williamsburg, Virginia. Eastbound lanes reopened around 11:30 a.m., but westbound did not open until 3:30 p.m. There was ice on the bridge and heavy fog in the area at the time of the crash, which involved 69 vehicles. Riverside Health System spokesperson Peter Glagola told the Virginia Pilot on Monday morning that 42 of the people admitted into its hospitals have already been released. So thankfully, the majority of these injuries were minor. Some were left life-threatening. You know, this will shake someone up big time, guys. 69 Pileup, being a part of that. Thankfully, right now, we haven't heard or haven't had any reports of deaths from this accident. Some had life-threatening injuries. So my guess is that we are seeing people being stabilized now. But crazy fog, ice on the bridge. Sunday morning, I remember seeing this all over the internet. And yeah, that looks horrifying, folks. So we pray and hope for a speedy recovery for all the folks that were involved in this accident. David Archbold, solar update December 2019. I highly recommend everyone go to What's Up With That and check this article out. This is pretty much what I was trying to say as well. But we are well into the solar cycle 24-25 minimum, but 24 may not have ended yet. The solar cycle isn't over until the heliospheric current sheet has flattened, and that could be as late as March of 2021. Now, a lot of folks saying that April of 2020 will be, that point, but David's saying we could see it go into 2021 before we see 25 psych start. Solar cycle amplitude does matter with respect to climate, and the amplitude of solar cycle 25 from projecting trends from the last 3 cycles looks like being about 80 in 2087, or 2027, I should say. And this goes on to talk about the F107 flux, and these charts are breaking down the trends and how we are heading towards a weaker solar cycle here coming up next. This was the solar cycle 24's peak. Let me get my blue arrow out. Here's the peak. Now, here we are. Look, guys, 164, 167. Average, this is average here. Solar cycle 23, solar cycle 22. That was average. These are average cycles when you see sunspots max out like this. This was below average, solar cycle 24. Solar cycle 25, according to this paper, is calling for a third of what we had in 24. In this figure, hemispheric sunspot areas plotted individually instead of cumulatively. What is readily apparent is that each hemisphere has been driven by its own trend and activity. The peaks of the both cycles all line up, which begs the question of what will happen if those trends and activity continue. In solar cycle 24, the peak of the northern hemispheric activity occurred 3 years before that of the southern hemisphere. If that repeats in solar cycle 25, with the amplitude of each hemisphere constrained by the blue trend lines, then the northern hemispheric peak would be in 2024, with amplitude of 200 millionths of a solar hemispheric area, and the southern hemisphere would peak in 2027 with an amplitude of 600 millionths of solar hemispheric area. For the whole solar cycle, the peak amplitude would be in 2027 with a smooth sunspot number of 80, down a third from solar cycle 24. So Lisa Upton saying 115. I know David Birch is somewhere between 91 and 97, and Mr. Archbold is saying 80. So if we had 130, 140, somewhere in that area during solar cycle 25, the smooth sunspot number, and we're going to be down a third from that going into solar cycle 25. So not only are we seeing cooling right now for the next couple of years as well, but when we try to go into a max, it's already going to be down about 33% from solar cycle 24's max. So that doesn't get very warm, in my opinion. And whoever said that the amplitude trend shows that it's going to go back up, that's off, way off. Let me see here. That's the prediction. So basically, Lisa Upton is saying that we step down, and then all of a sudden we're just going to be boop right back up. All of a sudden. Here we go. Out of all the history of all the solar cycles, this one's going to jump up like that. Be a first. We'll see. Anywho, down at the bottom, I'll read this last part because it's very important. The economic consequences of a cooling Earth are shown in this figure of part of a satellite photo of rural area in North Dakota taken on December 3rd, 2019. White as the snow and brown rectangles are unharvested corn. In NASA's words, a wet fall combined with corn plants that contain too much moisture provoked farmers to leave the corn in the fields this year. Snow on corn stalks can clog harvesting equipment. But the bigger concern is the moisture content. It is more economically prudent for a farmer to wait and let the corn dry on the stalks, harvesting it in February or early March than it is to harvest it now and to have to have it in dry facilities and all that. Now, guys, good grief. So February, leaving your corn in the ground till February, March. That's what farmers do. They've done it before, they've done it in the past. But are they really going to be able to do this in North Dakota in the spring of 2020? I mean, we saw a lot of flooding up there, guys. And there's a lot of brown rectangles, if you ask me. A lot of people are taking a leap of faith into being able to harvest enough to cover the bills and fulfill the contracts that were already signed for the product that these buyers are already purchasing. Very interesting stuff, how this person mentions that these farmers are planning to harvest this corn because right now it's too wet. And, you know, without being a gloom and doom type of person, I think all of us know for a fact that this year is not over by any means as far as climate. And I do believe that we could see this kind of climate through 2021 before we start to see a weak solar max. And then after the solar max, which, you know, David's saying 80, that's grossly low. But I do remember other people saying 67 sunspots too. And like I said, 91, 97 seems reasonable. That's where I'm kind of favoring, actually. But that's really low, guys. 80 sunspots, smooth number for the max. That's very low. It's well below. The average is between 180 and 220 smooth sunspot number. All right? We're going to be at 80. That's how low. And that's what people need to understand. Yeah, there's going to be a little bit of activity on the sun during the maximum period. But when they see and compare to previous maximums, they'll see the difference. It's not going to be like this switch flips on and everything's back to normal again. In fact, it might be the summers that you remember when you were younger. 2016, 2017, after these solar maxes that we just had, and that was a pretty hot summer, in my opinion. There were some pretty warm temperatures recorded. But looking at it now, we have seen the trends. And we definitely are continuing to watch this plummet. And just because we get a weak maximum of 80 to 100 sunspots, it does not mean that the grand solar minimum is over. It is just part of the cycle. And the unfortunate part is when we move into solar cycle 26, it's going to be less activity than solar cycle 25. Which, again, this is 24. 25 is going to be 33% less. So let's drop it down to about here. That's what we're talking about, folks. I mean, when you look at it side by side, this is NASA. I'm going with NASA's high estimate of 115 right there. If we go by David's numbers, David Archibald, that's where we are. Right about there. 80. Now that, when you look at it right next, that's putting it into perspective, folks. Big time. All right, let's check on our weather report here. And I got some interesting stuff to show you guys tonight. First, we still have the rain here in the south. It is moving off to the east. I know I was being silly this morning saying this storm looks like it's going to go north. Nope. It is exactly doing what GFS has predicted and is moving off of the east coast. So, but really, that's the biggest weather story we have. The biggest story today in the U.S. is the earthquake watch that we're having right now with the 6.0 that happened off of the coast of British Columbia. So let's get right into the meat and the bones. This is what I wanted to show you at first because I've seen things like this disappear. Check this out, guys. This is January 4th, all right? Heavy snow and ice for Georgia and parts of Jacksonville. Yeah. Now, what's confusing are these red lines. Usually these red lines indicate temperatures that are above freezing for the most part. And when you look at this temperature map, that's exactly what it represents. But this area that is showing the snow, look at this. Yeah. Super weird. Welcome to the Grand Solar Minimum, folks. We're going to see a lot of weather anomalies that we've never seen before, never even heard about. So this low pressure system on January 4th, which, 10 days out, so it could be just a glitch in the system. But something very interesting. I've never seen anything like this before. I mean, it's 46 degrees in Atlanta, but yet it's cold enough to snow in Jacksonville. So that'll be a super interesting weather anomaly to watch. If indeed it is, it could be just a glitch and an error on the GFS. But I just thought that was very strange to point out. I'll back it up. I'll show you where this thing starts. Let's go all the way to the beginning, shall we? Here we are currently. That storm on the East Coast is moving away. Snow across the four corner states for Christmas Day. Ho, ho, ho. More rain and snow for the West Coast as a low pressure system moves in. Now here's interesting too. Lots of heavy rain. This is for December 26th. So we have the solar eclipse, the moon crossing in front of the sun. We have an earthquake watch of 6.7, and we have a pretty strong low pressure system that's going to dump a huge amount of rain to Southern California. And ironically, where the area that we're looking at right now with all the rain is the same area where they're thinking about this 6.0 or higher actually happening. So definitely keeping our heads up over here in the West Coast. Meanwhile, when we get away from Christmas, that low pressure system moves across the Midwest and gains huge amounts of strengths. Nebraska, Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, you guys are going to get a decent snow. It's going to be all rain on the East Coast side of this thing. But once this storm system moves past here on December 30th, I believe that this is where the true winter cold air really starts to filter in for the Northeast, the Great Lakes, the Northern Plains, especially the Northeast. Lake effect snow into New Year's Eve for us up here in the Northeast, continuing on January 1st. And then we've got like an Alberta Clipper swooping down from Canada and affecting the Northeast as well by January 2nd. Light snow, again, nothing crazy. But look at this cold front here, guys. And the way this is oblong, the way the shape of this, okay, there's only one thing that I know that causes the pressure to be like that. And that is if we are looking at high pressure blocking near Greenland. So be curious to see what we see. Close. Definitely dominated by some high pressure, but actually that high pressure system here in the middle of the Atlantic shouldn't be causing that kind of ridging. So interesting jet stream we're looking at. Again, we have cold air just basically spilling in from Canada, like a 90-degree angle here. That's crazy too. This cold front is very bizarre. But we are expecting, and I've been kind of talking about this too, the second week of January is when I think we'll start to see that real cold air finally making its way. Look at this. January 3rd, this cold front, and into January 4th. Now the map is cooperating a little bit more with the temperatures, but still very bizarre. And I told you this is why I led the show off with that, what the GFS was showing us. There is going to be cold air here on January 4th it filters in, now that the GFS has adjusted. So I'm curious to see if that forecast of snow comes back. But it looks like, from what GFS is saying, and this makes more sense, this low pressure system in the Gulf of Mexico is actually going to bring warm air with it as it goes up the coast. And temperatures do rise, but the northeast. That, folks, could be a very potent nor'easter. I don't think I'm looking at the right thing. Let's try this one. All right, let's back this up. Yes, so the GFS is still showing snow. I had it on the wrong setting. My bad, folks. It's Monday, all right? But heavy snow, folks. Jacksonville, Florida. Look out. I mean, this ain't going to stick, but the temperatures will be cold enough, it looks like, for a chance of snow on January 4th for Jacksonville, Florida. Wow. More light snow possible for the northeast as we get into January, but really, guys, not a lot of major systems to talk about. The south has got the most weather. The northwest, you're also, and the southwest, I should say, as well. But really, we've got this one gigantic system that's going to be after Christmas. That's going to screech across the northern plains, the Great Lakes, and the northeast will see some of this action by the time it heads out by New Year's Eve. Lake effect snows for much of New York, and then another Alberta clipper to bring a quick burst of snow as well. Nothing major in the horizon, but cold is on the way. And here is a look at the latest idea. I'll back this up a little bit. Let's go to the beginning. This is currently, I'll go ahead and start this. I'll tell you the dates as we're rolling through this. December 22nd. There's Christmas. We got that cold blast into the northeast. It kind of hangs around for a little bit. Things look like they want to warm up. And then we get to the 27th, which is right here. The 28th, colder temperatures across the northwest into the midwest. And this right here is on January 1st, 2020. And you guys can see a lot of colder air that's bottled up in the north that's going to make its way down. And I believe as we get to the end of this run, and I'll show you here at the very end, there is more than enough reason to believe that that really cold, frigid air is going to be heading to the United States in a theater near you. Let's just go ahead and... This is January 8th, 2020. So if you've noticed, we had this really dark pink up here for December. Now we see it being pushed down further and further into Canada. So it is, in my opinion, with this, the way this is transferring right now, it's very likely that that second week of January of extreme cold is still sitting on the counter for now. January 15th through January 21st, I say, is when we'll really probably see this Arctic blast at some point. So, but for right now, let's enjoy what we have. It's not terrible across the states, I'll tell you that. I'll take 30s and 40s in December, so no complaints here. The worry is once we get started in January, how long does that cold last? Do we go all the way into April like last year? And a lot of evidence is pointing towards that as well. So, Mari, would you like to say hello to our lovely folks in the chat tonight?
Hello to our lovely folks in the chat tonight. I thought my laptop was going to die. It probably will shut down in the middle of me reading my little notes. I want to say hi to a lot of people in the chat. We got Cheryl, Richard, Jesse, Matt Bros just popped in, Arnold, Marco, Doug.
What's up, Matt?
Dog Patch.
Dog Patch, he's in Ohio.
Knife Collector, Melody.
Wow, a lot of familiar faces
hello,
tonight.
I can't name off all of you guys. I'm sorry, but hello, Merry Christmas to everyone. Happy holidays. I just hope everyone has a wonderful week and just enjoys their families and getting together and just eating good food. There's been a lot of talk about food Jesse is into meringue, it seems, and Cheryl's talking about cookies. Jesse, I do want to say I really hope your mother gets on the mend as quickly as possible. He is worried she has pneumonia. Awful. So, prayers go out to you and your mom and your family, Jesse. We hope she has a speedy recovery. Sue Hayes said Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Date, Mari, and everyone. So I'm excited. I got a lot done today for Christmas. I have not been online on our social media accounts. People are saying I'm a little slow approving posts in the Facebook group. Bear with me here. It's just a tough time of year to get everything done. I've been putting glitter on stockings and having
she's a real Martha Stewart, folks.
Gingerbread
GSM
house
Martha
competitions with the kids and making lasagna. So it's been a crazy just, family time kind of stuff. It's been really good. So are we going to be on live tomorrow morning?
We will be live in the morning, I think, for the most part.
Are you taking Christmas off, Jade?
Christmas Day, definitely. No reports from us on Christmas Day, unless it's absolute new world-breaking news that we have to jump in, and unfortunately, that could happen. So we'll see.
And then possibly Lee on Friday.
Lee probably next Friday after the New Year. Yeah.
Good. Okay.
The next so Lee Wheelbarger will be joining us after the first of the year. We'll have a little just GSM chit chat. Maybe we'll have a topic as well. After the first of the year, also thank you Patreon members for being patient. We will fire up the call-in shows once again after the first as well. So other than that, guys,
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Maybe Jake will sing for us. Maybe if you do anything, you'll give us some Christmas
Maybe
songs.
I can release a Christmas song or two on Christmas Day.
I haven't done Greta Grinch yet. I gotta do that.
All right, guys, that's going to do it for us tonight. Thank you for tuning in once again to the Grand Solar Minimum channel and making us your #1 channel for Grand Solar Minimum news. We'll talk soon, guys. Take care.
Do you like this show? Give us a thumbs up. Want to support us more? Share to your favorite social media platform. Buy a t-shirt or become a Patreon. All links are in the description.